Welcome everyone to part 2 of our 2022 retrospective. This time we talk about the games we covered from September to December and all of the games we covered in our spotlight episodes. It turns out that there were a fair number of them. But before we get to all of that, here is what you can expect after the episode in our call to action. It's just me today, so there's not really any fun banter after the episode. But please join me anyway, and you can hear about new things that are coming in 2023. I will have our patron thank yous, and I'm going to have some information on how you can help Ryan out because life is just being really unfair to world's favorite optimist right now. Until then, enjoy the episode.
Last time on Character Creation Cast, Amelia and I were in the middle of reminiscing about everything we released in 2022. We made it all the way through August. We're picking up right where we left off last time. Enjoy.
September, we were excited about the Rings of Power premiering. And we decided to have Steph Midlock and James Pearson, two lovely friends, just delightful people. I love them so much. On to talk about The One Ring, a Lord of the Rings role-playing game.
Yeah, second edition.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's wild. I did not know that as well.
Really?
But yeah, it was The One Ring second edition. The first edition covered a different area of the world.
Oh, okay.
And then the second edition came in and said, we're covering this area instead. And here's some updated rules.
Okay.
So yeah, it was wild. First of all, finding out that there was a first edition with like dozens of supplements and all the first edition stuff is compatible with second edition.
Did we talk about that in the episode?
We did.
Oh.
I think this was during...
It was. If it came out in September, then it would have been during my ECT period. So even with Nova, like I know I was kind of nervous about covering that one because I was sort of in the middle of my mental health crisis. And so my brain was like not all there. So it's been fun sort of rediscovering some of the stuff that I just like did not remember. We had a lot of fun with that. And it's just, first of all, it's a gorgeous book.
So good.
It is a very interesting system.
Yep.
And I've heard nothing but good things from people who have played it.
Yeah.
That it very much has a focus on like the storytelling and these sort of like chapters of the game.
Yeah.
I made a man of Bree. His name was Knob Heathertoes.
Knob Heathertoes, yep.
I do love that this book gives you some naming ideas. And poor Knob, he did not really want to go adventuring. He lived with his parents.
I think he worked at like an inn or something with his parents.
they owned an inn, and he kind of just worked there. He was pretty happy, just like...
This is in the town of Bree, yep.
Hanging out.
and
Doing his thing.
Of course, I played Laura Lynn, an elf of Linden, a warden, actually. And Laura Lynn's whole deal was like, I am learning about the shadow, the capital S shadow of this world, and there's stuff coming. Because this takes place like 30 years before the events of the Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Before the ring gets...
Before the War of the Ring.
Right. So like we know stuff is coming and like I'm seeing the signs of all that stuff coming. And at one point I run into Gandalf, like the Gandalf.
Right. I do. Yeah.
We do a buddy cop sort of excursion. And
I would watch that. Hey, Amazon, get me a Gandalf buddy cop.
Gandalf and the Warden, buddy cop comedy.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Just as Tolkien intended. Yeah.
And then Gandalf became our patron. Like he said, he pulled all of us together and he said, I'll get you when I need you. We'll meet in Bree and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, he's like, look, we're on season 4.
Uh-huh.
I don't have the time personally to be on the cast anymore, so
Uh-huh.
I'm going to bring all of you together and you can do your little fellowship thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we got brought together, and I forgot exactly what we were supposed to be doing. I think we talked about it during the episodes, but it was just such a delightful time with Steph and James creating this group and everything.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. James regularly runs it for their group. So
yep.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was so much fun. It was
100%.
October, we decided to once again go into our spooky mode.
Yeah.
And we had my friend Justin Jess come on to discuss Delta Green.
Yes.
Which is based on the Call of Cthulhu games. It has that similar system, but like a little bit neater, a little bit cleaner. And sort of some like very interesting changes.
Yes.
Rather than something like Call of Cthulhu where you go in and you're just like a nobody doing whatever.
Right.
This one you do have some kind of talent. You know what you're getting into. But the general goal is to sort of keep all of the supernatural stuff on the down low.
I know. Yeah, it's
very investigative heavy.
It's effectively like the X-Files only ramped up, right?
Right.
And like the whole concept of the game is fascinating, like keeping the Cthulhian horrors away from the masses, and you're playing effectively regular people kind of that signed up for this in a way.
Right. So they are people with some kind of talent that Delta Green would want. And you know, so like in my case, I was a librarian, but I specialized in sort of like secret government documents. You were a newscaster.
Yeah, I was a TV news anchor. April O. Jacobs.
Yes.
Yeah,
my character was Illuminata M. Justice, aka I am.
My character wore a lot of yellow, just to annoy Amelia
Ryan
a little
doesn't
bit.
care about me. Yeah,
I apologize.
You don't.
I don't. But I do love you, and I only do it in jest.
It's true. It's true out of love. Yeah, that was a really interesting one. I love the investigative nature of it. I love that, unlike Call of Cthulhu, you are not necessarily going up against like this big otherworldly horror.
Yeah.
Like it is not necessarily this cosmic horror. It's like you are investigating these small little pieces because it's a very bureaucratic organization. Is the thing that we loved about the character sheets is they do look like a government form.
They do.
Which is super interesting. They really kind of went all in on some of the aesthetics of this game too. So I really loved it. It kind of took a lot of the things that I didn't like about Call of Cthulhu and fixed some of them.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite parts about this series actually was our discussion about the sanity mechanics too.
Yes, we had a great discussion about that.
Yeah, because we weren't able to really dive into that with the Call of Cthulhu system because we're kind of focused on going through
like
the
introducing the system to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really great that Justin was able to kind of join us for this discussion of like the sanity mechanics, the kind of gross history behind utilizing the terminology that's being utilized, that sort of stuff. And like we don't have solutions for it. We're not professionals.
But it was really nice to like discuss it in sort of a nuanced way because I think a lot of the discussions I've seen about it in the past have been on Twitter, which is not a great way to have discourse about nuanced things in 280 characters.
Not really.
And so it was really nice to kind of pick apart that sort of like, here's what they were going for. Here's how I like to use it. Here's, you know, ways that you could potentially improve it. Here's why people have a problem with it.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a really great discussion. I'm excited that we got the chance to dig into some of that.
Absolutely. We're getting close to the end of the year now with November.
Mhm.
We covered Sleepaway with my friend Nicole Trainer.
Mhm.
This is a game by J Dragon that it feels so different than a lot of games, which is pretty easy to say about a lot of Jay's games,
It's true.
honestly. Um, and this is a game where you play camp counselors trying to protect your kids from this supernatural threat called the Lindworm that you
Mhm.
don't know much about.
Yeah, this game had uh, a really unique marriage between this sort of wholesome, like,
Yes.
summer camp vibe where we, like, made these kids and it's like you get attached to your campers and all that kind
Uh-huh.
of stuff, but, like, oh, also this lurking horror and
Yeah.
the crows in the forest and the, like the old
And
witch.
anybody
And
can die at any moment, and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
so brutal. Like, it's a belonging outside of belonging game, so there's no dice, no game masters, of course, the no dice no masters thing.
mhm,
And it really cuts deep on those moves, like especially when you're getting into the hard moves that give you your tokens and
yeah,
whatnot. Some of those are just so brutal. um
yeah,
it's ripe for emotional like interactions, but also like really sweet interactions at the same time.
right. And that was the part that just like it. That's the part to me that felt the most unique about it is that
Yeah.
it was very easy at one point to be like, oh, this is like a wholesome, sweet game. And then it was also like, oh, by the way, the Lindworm.
Uh-huh.
And you sort of snap back and you're like, oh yeah, right. There's this
Right.
lurking horror, and my job is to protect the campers, not from normal
Yeah.
teenage angst necessarily, but from this outside creeping force.
Yeah, it honestly feels like that's like the perfect way to play a horror game, is to have this real sweet stuff like
Mhm.
juxtaposed against like extreme existential horror.
Yeah, that dichotomy I think really heightens
Hmm.
the horror.
Absolutely.
Because it feels so foreign. Like you really do kind of forget about it, so that when it's there, it feels much more impactful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
So
I
I
made Soliloquy, the crafter.
yep.
Um, who kind of does some magic, and but
Hmm.
also runs the arts and crafts. Um,
Your magic was like omens, right?
yes, yeah. And a thing that we kept landing on was this importance of honesty.
Uh-huh.
And so like the way that the omens worked had to do with some of that
Yes.
honesty and the strength of them and things like that. It was really really interesting the way we kept landing on these same themes over and over again
Hmm.
too. You played Margaret-James.
Margaret-James. Yep. Margaret James Smith, the song leader. She was this, she's this, just, she loves to sing. She loves to play music, and her power of song is able to do things like hold things at bay while you're singing, or calm everybody down when we're
Mhm.
all singing a group song together, stuff like that. Right.
Yeah.
And like the different things that you can do with that, with these moves, is just phenomenal. Like
Yeah.
I can imagine some real tense situations, like, oh well, things are encroaching, time to pull out my song that keeps everything at bay while I'm singing, and I hope there's enough verses to make it out of this alive.
Yeah. It was
It's intense.
it was intense, and there was like you had been a crafter
Yeah.
and chose to not pursue that magic.
Mhm.
Which is interesting too.
Yeah.
So there
There's
was a lot of like interconnectedness too. At our LARP, our Renaissance Fair
yes,
LARP camp.
buried the
Yeah.
lead again. Yeah, we made our camp a LARP camp.
Yeah.
Just because we could. It wasn't in the rules to like define what sort of camp you had, but like it just
We could
felt right.
not.
It felt
Yeah.
right. But it had to take place in the woods. It has to take place with a lake nearby.
Right.
There's like a few things that you have to have.
Yeah, there's like this lake, this field, this
Yep. But then
and I know
like
when
you
we
get
talked
to
to
add.
Nicole at the beginning and I said like what kind of camp is it?
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, I've never picked anything that wasn't just like basic summer camp, like cabins and hiking and, and I was like, well, there's other types, like
let's make it fun.
Let's make it fun.
So we leaned into our nonsense and made it a LARP camp.
We did.
It was a lot of fun. And yeah, I was thinking Sleepaway, perfect in between October, December, because October's spooky, December's cozy. Let's do something that's both. And it turned out to be kind of right on target, I think.
It was, yeah, for sure.
100%.
For our cozy game for December, we chose to finally cover Ryuutama. It's one that was on our list from the very beginning.
Yep.
People have suggested it many times. And 4.5 years in, we were like, well,
let's do it. Finally.
Let's do it.
Yep. Our guest was Amber Seeger, who is the host of Tabletop Babble, as well as part of the Shapeshift podcast, I believe it is. And that one is also using Ryuutama for its actual play. And this was a really interesting experience. I don't think we've ever had an experience like this going through a game before.
Yeah, so this was a game that I was not super excited to cover because it's just not my thing. Like cozy, sweet, it's like I didn't necessarily love Mouse Guard when we did that one because it was just like not my vibe. But it's been on the list. And so it was like, okay, fine.
Yes.
And you could hear it in that first episode, me like kind of steadily getting more interested in it and being like, okay, like I like these mechanics. I can get into it. And then that excitement just kind of dropping off as we went through the character creation process.
Yeah, because the actual process of doing character creation was it was an older game from 2007 and got translated, I think, verbatim in 2015 from the original Japanese into English. And it was just a little frustrating. Right. And I can see the gameplay being fun. I can see, like, once you get to the game, things will be fun. But the process of getting there was like, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do and what I'm not supposed to do at this point.
And I think by the end, I didn't feel particularly tied to or passionate about my character.
Yeah.
Which is the thing that we look for in character creation and almost always end up there.
Yes.
Because of, the process. And, certainly that depends on the game and it depends on the guests and what we're able to come up with in that process. But this was one that it was like, I'm just not feeling it. Like nothing about the character or the choices that we made or anything like that made me like excited to put those things together.
I think it's because it was a game that requires collaborative world building, but it doesn't have you do that first. And it doesn't even say you have to do collaborative world building. It just says make your characters and then you can just play. And then during play, you can create villages, you can create your world, create NPCs for all these places, etc. But like, if we had more time and we created a couple villages and created the world, maybe even beforehand, or during.
Yeah, I think if we had done the world building beforehand, and this is, the same thing we kind of ran across with our D&D thing, is that like by making these characters, we have already made decisions about the world.
Yeah.
But like they were not cohesive decisions.
Yeah.
And we came out of it and we really had to kind of like find a way to shoehorn my character in with the other things that you had done. Like, your two characters kind of had this like easy connection with you being a patron of the arts and that kind of stuff. And mine was just like, also Amelia's here.
Amelia wants to make new colors. And
and we were able to kind of do that, but even by the end, it still felt really forced.
Yeah, exactly. And I can see how the trio would work in an actual game, right? And I could see us, working together to complete each of our goals and whatnot.
But as we've discussed in the past, that is not a thing the game did for us.
Exactly. Yeah. It got so close. I think Ryuutama is like, inches away from really phenomenal character creation and world building for a really phenomenal experience, but it's just not quite there from a before play standpoint. But from what everybody says when you're playing, it's a lot of fun, and it sounds like fun. It's Downtime the RPG, basically. And I think Downtime is one of the most interesting points of playing things like Dungeons and Dragons, because you're taking a break from extreme adventure to decompress a bit.
And that is always the thing that I tell people about D&D. They're like, but in my game, we had this great moment, and I was like, and that was your table.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with you playing D&D.
Exactly.
Other than to refresh your things, you needed to have that down. Like, other than D&D requiring you to have that downtime, the game mechanics did nothing to, like, promote that.
Yeah.
Like, you could play it just fine without that. And so, like, Ryuutama is very much the opposite of that, of, like, what are you doing in that downtime when you're in the village and stuff like that. But yeah, I just didn't come away the way I do in a lot of our character creations, where it's like, dang, I wish I could play these characters. I was just like, I made something. It's fine.
But the discussion episode was phenomenal.
Yeah, we got to have a really great discussion about character sheets and accessibility. And one of the things that I talk about very frequently in games, the fact that character creation is the first touch point most of us have with a game. And, the way that sets expectations.
Yes.
And we got to that question of, like, how does it set expectations for play? And it was like, it doesn't. It just doesn't.
Right.
It has nothing to do with gameplay.
It's hard. And I think it was just a matter of not having the time to fully dive into it, right?
Right, but the thing was, like, fully dive into it meant play the game.
Exactly.
And that's not what we do.
Exactly.
And there are so many games where we've come away being excited to play the game. Like, even on games where I'm kind of like, is like, at least I'm married to this character and I want to do that. And we just didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a very strange series, but, like, I'm glad we did it. And
I'm glad we got the opportunity to do some of that. We have our series with Jeff and John where we're like, this game's terrible, I hate it. But we knew that going into it.
Exactly.
And, then the other ones where we're, like, really excited about things. And it was interesting to have one that we were kind of, like, lukewarm on.
Yeah.
And it's one of those, like, I might want to play it because I've heard good things, but it wasn't anything the game did for me.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was all of our series. Those 12 series for 2022. We also had 5 spotlight episodes throughout the year. And these are nice little bonus episodes that really just get to the heart of character creation in the games that we cover. So the first spotlight that we covered in the year, Amelia wasn't able to make it to, unfortunately, but we covered Deimos Academy with Austin Taylor and Amanda Call. So this was a game by Banana Chan, and it basically covers like going to a high school reunion, like, years down the line, and your high school happened to be a boarding school that's basically haunted. So yeah. And the fun part is, like that's great, but then, like, every character that you make has superpowers. So it's like, by the way, you all have superpowers. And so I created Arthur, who was a telekinetic. And his powers came about when, like, somebody was drowning or something like that. He pulled them in onto shore and then left or something because he was scared by his own power or something like that. I can't remember. Like, it has something to do with you have to do these fears. You have to select fears and like those fears come into play throughout the academy.
Yeah.
But basically the whole thing is you get invited to this reunion, but like it's the shadiest of reasons, like come to the reunion and we're gonna hand out money to one of the selected people. And it's like,
yeah, wasn't there something about like ghosts or like
so there's like ghosts
in a
there's
library or something?
Yeah, so
I don't know, I had to listen to it to make the art for it, and I don't really feel like kind of like vaguely remember it.
Yeah, it was a very interesting game. And the whole thing is it plays with paper dolls and stickers.
Mm-hmm.
So like you dress these dolls in like various things, and you put the paper dolls in the rooms within the book, and you role play with the physical objects of the game itself, which is really fascinating.
Yeah.
But the whole point of the game is to explore this this boarding school and kind of uncover the secrets of what the heck is going on. Like, there's no way they would invite us all here to give us all money. That feels weird, right?
Yeah.
So, like, we had to figure out what was going on, why we were the ones invited, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So basically a spooky game with a lot of mystery involved and some really interesting, unique mechanics that I haven't really seen before.
Yeah.
But then we got to Yazeba's
bed and breakfast. Yeah, this was an interesting one because we did get to cover it with Jay.
Yeah, we talked about it with designer Jay Dragon and Lily J. Harris, one of the artists.
Mm-hmm.
And this one didn't have character creation.
No, this one, it was very interesting because it was like, why did we pick this one?
Right.
Because it doesn't have character creation. You pick characters and you sort of play this chapters in, you know, and so like you could potentially play a different character every chapter, or you can pick which chapters you play, because it tells you who shows up in each of those. Yes, this one was interesting because it was just very different from what we've normally done. It was a really interesting game, and I'm glad we got to cover it because it was so different and it was so outside of what we normally do.
I know the character that I chose for the scenario that we picked was the Angel. I forget his name, but it was this just a literal,
like biblically
angel. Accurate angel.
Yeah.
It was just phenomenal. And like, there's so many different characters that you can play in this game, which is kind of another reason we wanted to cover it, is like they've got a list of 40 some odd characters that you choose from to play these scenes. And each scene has like a couple characters that are going to be in the scene. And then you can pile on extra characters on top of that in most cases.
Right.
And then you just play through in this like weird mystical bed and breakfast that's like super mundane but also magical, run by a witch that hates romance.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It was very, very interesting. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about that one.
Yeah, it was. It's a very good game, though.
Yeah,
100%.
Definitely. After that, we got to cover a game that I was very, very excited about. I had sort of an advanced copy of this one because Ben had asked me to write kind of a review of it for the Kickstarter.
Right.
He wanted like a couple sentences, and I think I wrote like 3 paragraphs. And I was like, use what you want. And so this was Broken by Ben Wallace, who we've had on the show before on our Evolution cast about romance in games.
Yep.
And this is a game about playing the process of a breakup.
Yes.
And the central mechanic of this game is you pick objects kind of related to this relationship or whatever, and you break them as part of play. And you know, one of the reasons that he had asked me to do the review is because I've been through a divorce. And I have to say, like, I cried reading it. And I made notes on it as I was reading, and one of my notes on there is, "Oh my God, Ben, you monster!"
You monster.
You monster.
Uh-huh.
It was one of the most visceral and cathartic mechanics I have ever seen.
Yes.
You and I got the chance to actually play this game,
We
and
did.
we can talk about that a little bit later. What that experience felt like. But we had Ben on because I really wanted to cover this for an Evolution cast before I went to Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And so we did, as we did with our Starcrossed game, we did groups.
We did groups. Yep. Groups of 2.
Yes. So do you want to talk a little bit about the ones we made?
Yeah. So I made Bubble Gumdrop, your quintessential magical girl, and paired with your Lady Darkness. And we had gotten married, so eventually you were Lady Darkness Gumdrop.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. Lady Darkness Gumdrop.
Because you wanted to take my last name. And you were quintessential necromancer, of course, right? So this was the magical girl necromancer, enemies to lovers sort of storyline. And eventually we had to break up because that's the conceit of the game, right? So we created this couple that had been through a lot in the past, reconciled, and fell in love with one another. And now we're breaking up for who knows what reason. But like, just some of the things like that we put in there, like you had some good items that you were going to be breaking.
Yes, because we kind of tried to pick a few things that we would maybe do.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah.
Oh, it's really good. I don't want to spoil it too much if you haven't heard that one, but really it hits to your heart. Like there's 2 options for the stuff that you can break in this game. It's either you can make up whatever you want and write it down on like a popsicle stick, and then that stick represents that object in this fictional world, or you can use real objects that you get like from a thrift store or old stuff you have that you don't mind breaking, and kind of fit those real objects in with your story.
Yeah, I kind of make a story based on what things you picked out.
Yeah.
So each scene that you play is based on a memory kind of around that. Every scene will begin with one character recalling something positive from the relationship using the words, "Remember when blank." The other person will then serve a reminder, giving a twist, a complication to the memory using the words, "But you forgot about blank."
Yeah.
And then you kind of role play out this scene.
Yes.
And the goal of each scene is that one person becomes disenchanted.
Yeah.
With the situation.
With like a particular trait that they liked about the other person.
Yes.
Like and then you say, I used to think this about you.
Yeah.
Before you break the object.
Right. And one of the things that I really liked about it, and a note that I made in my reading of it, is that I like that it really challenges the sort of like, I hate you version of breakups.
Right.
It really forces you to think about the nuance of a breakup and to sort of have empathy for the situation, because you're saying, you know, remember this happy memory?
Yeah.
And then like, here's how it kind of went wrong.
Yep.
So you're forced to remember that there were good things there. And to have, you know, empathy for the other person and acting out the ways that the viewpoints of a situation can really differ.
Yeah.
And the ways that people change over the course of a relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was, oh boy.
I know.
We'll talk more about it later.
We will. So what characters did you and Ben make then?
We made these really kind of mundane characters. We made these customs agents in this space situation. Ben made a character named Alex Jordan. I made Cressida Wilson. Alex got this promotion that I really wanted, and felt that I was kind of qualified for, and so that kind of started to tear us apart.
Yeah.
And this, you know, like the changing power dynamic of that relationship And so that was an interesting one to play out because it was just like a very normal
Yeah.
situation.
In a somewhat, not normal circumstance. So space custom agents.
We did pick sort of a different genre, but we played out a very mundane relationship situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is very different from what you two did.
Yep. So I wanted to pull from one of the games that I made about playing Highlander Immortals. And Ben and I did Highlander Immortals in a relationship over hundreds of years.
Yes.
So we were able to pull objects throughout the centuries, which was just such a fascinating concept that like our relationship lasted multiple lifetimes before we would break up. And so I played Isabella Mano, and Ben was Cristaldo Mano, I believe. And then like it's just these two immortals that like fell in love throughout time, and so good.
Yeah.
Like the thought of like the heartbreak of one relationship for one lifetime was a lot, but like you add 10 to 20 lifetimes worth of history with somebody, and that's just wild to think about.
Yeah.
And what would cause those two people to eventually break apart?
Right. Yeah, this was a gut punch of a game.
Absolutely.
Similarly, in this sort of weird relationship breakup drama, we covered a game called I Have the High Ground by Just Levine and Seda.
Yep.
This was so much fun. We ended up having to break this one into 2 episodes because we went on so long.
It was so good though.
It's basically playing out kind of that Anakin Obi-Wan situation.
Yes.
But you are doing everything up to that final duel.
Yep.
And in fact, whoever ends up starting the duel loses.
Yep.
And it was really fantastic.
Yeah.
So we made a pair, and Justin Seda made a pair. Ours was, of course, Magical Girl Necromancer.
Yes.
We had been on a Magical Girl team.
Yep.
Originally. And fell in love, and you know. But you had been sort of corrupted.
Yes.
And one of the things with this game is that you have to choose the stakes.
Yeah.
And so we decided that we wanted end of the world.
All the way to 11. Crank it up.
All the way. Right. And Justin Seda played these 2 space pilots that were just constantly trying to one-up each other.
Yeah.
And have a karaoke competition in a bar on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yep.
So they picked like the lowest of the low stakes. And that was a really fun juxtaposition to kind of talk about. Ours was this like epic back and forth.
Yeah.
Over this iridescent volcano. And just fantastic.
I really loved these characters that we came up with, because like I was the corrupted one and you were the one that was like still like pure and good and whatnot,
which is different than normal.
Because I was originally Princess Sapphire, and then after becoming corrupted became Princess Obsidian, and you were Princess Opal, which has the iridescent sort of motif built into it, which is fantastic. Yes.
Yeah. Like it was these like huge high stakes, last minute, like, if I'm defeated, it means the end of the world. I
think it was end of the universe. Like like I was trying, you had this orb of darkness, right? Right. Because you knew that like if you use it right, it's fine. But like I said, you have to destroy it. So I was trying my hardest to take it and destroy it. And if that would have happened,
if you had destroyed it, it released that corruption,
destroying it would destroy the universe. But I didn't know that. I thought destroying it was the only way to save the universe, but the orb was the thing corrupting me.
Right. Yeah.
So like, it was kind of like the One Ring sort of
right. Yeah.
thing.
And it was just this like intense, like emotional thing of like, I, cared about you and I had watched you slowly become this different person.
Yeah.
And, you felt like I was trying, like you were doing the right thing and I was trying to stop you. And there was that resentment. On the other hand, we had Jess and Seda, who were just like these sort of rivals and kind of like pretending like they didn't like each other, but constantly trying to one-up each other.
Yeah, because they really liked each other and they wouldn't admit it.
Right. And so they decide that they're going to have this karaoke battle in this space bar. And, it was to the point where like one of them was bringing their own microphone and trying to like move the chairs to have the perfect acoustics, and like the bar staff just hated them. So it was this really, really petty thing. So we really got to show the depth and breadth of things in that game. But yeah, that
so much
like
fun.
Theirs was very much enemies to lovers and ours was lovers to enemies. I loved that one.
And it could have gone both ways, right? The story that we had going could have been like, you save me and bring me back, and then I have to deal with all the bad stuff I did as Princess Ascidian, or I win and goodbye everything.
Right. But we would never find that out because that's not the point.
It's not the point of the game. Like, even if we did a full playthrough of this game, that's not what you find out.
It's right up
You
to
find
that
out
point.
what happens just before that first strike of the battle.
Right.
Oh, it's so good.
It was so good. Rebels of the Outlaw Wastes. We covered with Banana Chan and Michael Addison, who are the designers.
Yep.
This one you play in this sort of like post-apocalyptic kind of like Mad Max sort of situation.
Yeah.
But it has a lot of world building involved in the character creation, which obviously we were very excited about.
Yeah.
We picked something where like you had to kind of pick what your apocalypse was, like what had happened. And we decided Y2K.
Y2K.
Which I was really excited about it because you were like, I'm thinking, and I was like, I know what I want. And then you said Y2K, and I was like, yes, because that was also what I wanted. And so we like leaned full into this concept that the world had ended in 1999.
Yeah.
And we built this world that was like, everybody was known by their old AIM screen names.
Yep.
The city of St. Louis was this like big, hub.
Yeah.
And money was based on Tamagotchis.
Yep.
And however long your Tamagotchi had lived and how healthy it was, made it worth more. And so this evil corporation was doing Tamagotchi farming.
Yeah. So like people would have safety within the corporation's walls versus all the existential stuff that's outside of the walls. But they would have to work farming Tamagotchis to get them to a level 100 to make them both worth more. And secretly, they were trying to find the golden Tamagotchi, which would unlock something to
like
be
a
determined
vault or something. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we finally figured out that like one of the characters, I think it was Banana Chan's character, was a cyborg who was also part Tamagotchi, and we think that character was actually the golden Tamagotchi once to the proper level, right?
Yeah.
So like I made Luna Moonhaven, who is basically a punk rock Sailor Moon cat person with wings, is how I described it.
As one does.
So
like a totally normal,
But it's interesting because like when you're doing character creation in this, you blend things together to create your look and whatnot. And like
right. So you had to pick two.
Yeah.
Two things to kind of blend together.
Yeah, so there's like some interesting genre blending going on within this game. which really kind of just taking a couple of prompts and how do they blend, like really unlocks some really phenomenal creativity, I think.
Right. And we each blended our own. So like each character got to pick these two things for their look. So I made my character was Sellout 48. Because again, based on our AIM screen names, and so I really wanted to bring in my ska vibes. So, you know, of course, based on that classic Real Big Fish hit.
Yeah.
And I picked Cosmonaut and Halloween as my combination of looks. So my character wore this like Daft Punk style helmet, but also had this floor length cape.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I picked the bookworm as my calling. So it was, you know, I was kind of a nerdy, like, you know, I knew the Encyclopedia Britannica back to front. That was another really fun one. We did ahead of their Kickstarter.
Yeah, it was a really fun game. I think it would be a lot of fun to play. Depending on the scenarios that you want to throw in there, it can really change how the game plays and your goals and whatnot. But I thought that it was another game by Banana Chan that who's just a brilliant designer, and pretty much anything Banana, anything you want to throw at us would be like, you know, that's fine. Let's cover it because
let's do it. Yeah,
it's just phenomenal.
Agreed.
And that was pretty much it for 2022. We did have our Q&A episodes as well. A 3-part series of answering like 51 questions or something like that. I can't even remember how many questions we answered.
It was enough that we had to do 3 episodes. Yeah,
I know, but it was a lot of fun. I don't know if we can do that every year, but it's definitely some of those milestones. We'll just throw out some more requests for questions and just tackle them. And I think it would be a lot of fun to do another time.
We hadn't done it since our like year 1 recap. So we decided to do it for 4 years.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to see how we'd grown and changed. And we got a chance to really talk about a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that we don't normally get to talk about. So that was really cool.
Absolutely.
2022 was a big year for us. It was really enjoyable. It was a lot of fun. We got to cover a lot of great games. 12, 13, 14, 15. So 17 different games.
17 games. Wow.
17 games this year.
And that's not including the couple of games that we did on our Patreon.
Right.
And so there's a few other games behind the scenes that we can go into next episode. But goodness, it was a good year. A lot of great games, a lot of interesting experiences during recording, and a lot of fun stuff that we did and kind of figured out about the podcast itself too along the way.
Right.
So
we learned a lot about ourselves and our style and that kind of stuff. So it was exciting.
Absolutely. So that's all we have for these first couple of episodes. Stay tuned for the next one where we're going to go over kind of our favorite moments of the year and talk about some cool stuff that we did and some more behind the scenes stuff as well.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, we'll see you then. Call to action.
Yeah, like that. Normally, this is the part where Ryan and I banter back and forth about all the stuff we talked about in the episode. I will say this was so much fun going back and looking at everything that we covered in 2022 because I had honestly forgotten about so much of it, and it just felt great to go through and see all of the cool stuff that we made. I'm really excited for all of you to hear next week's episode because there's a lot of really fun discussion about the stuff that we covered, kind of our feelings on it, some of our favorites. It's really good. We had so much fun doing this, and I kind of hope that it's something that we keep doing in years to come. Our announcements now. Your favorite podcat and mine, Mr. Peaches, is not doing well. At the time that I am recording this on January 4th, he doesn't have long. They have an appointment on Friday to put him to sleep. He's not been eating well. He's lost a lot of weight, and it seems like he has a mass somewhere in his intestines. He is 17, and he has been Ryan's recording companion through our years of making this podcast. And I know that this is a really tough time for Ryan. If you would like to help out with the costs of his final care, you can find Ryan's PayPal at paypal.me/Lord Neptune. I know that any help that any of you are able to provide would absolutely mean the world to Ryan and his family. Mr. Peaches has lived a happy life with lots of snuggles, and I know yesterday they were watching Sailor Moon together, so that's great, but it's always a really tough thing to go through, and Mr. Peaches he's a staple of our podcast, honestly, and it's gonna be tough. So any help that any of you are willing to provide really would mean so much to Ryan, and again, like I said, to his family too. We are working on putting out a newsletter. I'm still kind of figuring out the behind the scenes stuff on how to distribute it. We're looking at a couple different options, and I feel like we picked one, but I don't remember which one because I didn't write it down. I also am going to try and figure out exactly how to get sign up information from anybody who would like a copy. And so as soon as we have a way for you to do that, we will let you know, and we'll put a link in the show notes. I'm really hoping that by next week I will have an official answer for that. But you can also stay tuned. I will put the info on our Twitter, hopefully our Instagram. Obviously, I will definitely put it on our Discord. So if you're not a member of that, please join us. It is a really fun group of people and pretty active, actually, too. You can find that at discord.charactercreationcast.com if you'd like to join. But stay tuned, and I'll have more info on how you can subscribe to our newsletter. In addition to signing up for that, you could also sign up for our Patreon. All patrons get access to our bonus chit-chat episodes, which is really just Ryan and I sitting down and having a weekly chat as friends. We have talked about everything from vaccines, the eventual fall of capitalism, whether bottled soda or fountain soda is better, the dubious history of Green Bay Packers quarterbacks, Midwestern accents. I don't know. We do talk a lot about our frustrations with health insurance also. But it's just kind of a fun, friendly chat where Ryan and I catch up every week, but we record it and put it out to all of you. So if you kind of want a way to get to know us a little bit better, or you just want to listen to my favorite genre of podcasts, friends talking about stuff, you can join our Patreon and get a weekly episode of that. Beyond that, you could also sign up for one of our higher tiers, and you get early access to episodes, bonus episodes that you won't hear on our regular feed. Also, monthly Zoom chats that we hang out with our patrons for like an hour and a half once a month, and it's so much fun. We have such great conversations. So if you want to find any of that, you can find that at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. One of the other things that we do, obviously, is we get to thank all of the people that have supported us there. We're really grateful to everybody that has helped us out. We've been doing our Patreon for like a little over 6 months now, I think, and we are just so excited for all of the support that we've gotten so far. It helps us afford making the show. We are over halfway to our goal of covering the costs so that we can kind of break even on making this. And that means so much to us. So without further ado, I get to read all the thank yous today. First patron ever, Lieutenant, thank you so much for your support. DJG, aka Tigranosaurus, former guest. We appreciate your support. Thank you. Eric Bonce. You shouldn't have, but we're really glad you did. Thank you, Matt Newton, for your support. It brings us so much joy. Thanks, Shadim Kabal. We are so glad to have you backing us. Thank you to Daryl Holiday II. We couldn't do this without you. Thank you to The Shyest Barbarian. We could not have so much fun in our Discord or our monthly chats without you. You bring so much light to our little group. Benjamin Sweeney, thank you so much. We appreciate your support, Lurkin McGinnis. Thank you. We are really glad to have you here, Rob Fletcher. Thank you for supporting us. Kevin Brown, thanks. Thank you to my favorite name ever, Tentacle Duck. We are so glad to have John Adamus. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for everything that you have done for us as podcasters and everything you've done for me as my friend also. And thank you to A3 Sketchpad. We are so glad to have you backing us as well. And thank you, of course, to all of our future patrons. We really do appreciate it. If you are interested in helping us in a way that does not cost any money, you can always leave us a rating or review. Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Podcast Addict, Facebook, or leaving a rating on Spotify. You can't leave a review there, but you can click some stars. Every one of those reviews helps people find our show. I know that every podcast says that, but it really does make it come up sooner in the search results. And when people look at it, they're like, oh, this sounds like a great podcast. And also it just makes us feel really good because I like knowing that real people are listening to the show and that you're not all just like the numbers on our dashboard. It always feels kind of weird to see names and actual thoughts from people rather than just like an abstract concept of an audience. So we would really love if you could help us out with that and just make us feel good. That is all I have for today's episode. You can join us next time. We are going to talk about what we loved, what we're looking forward to, and best of all, I make Ryan choose a favorite child. Until then, please take care of yourselves, stay safe, drink some water, snuggle your pets, or snuggle a stranger's pet if you're desperate, and keep making those amazing people. We'll see you next time. Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can be found on Twitter at CreationCast or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Amelia Antrim, and I can be found on Twitter at Ginger Reckoning, or on my other podcast, Garbage of the Five Rings. Our other host, Ryan Boelter, can be found on Twitter at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast it originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by the absolutely fantastic Ryan Boelter. Further information for the game system used in today's guests can also be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support our show, find us on Patreon. Get access to bonus episodes, extra outtakes, and much, much more at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time.